Hello and welcome. We really appreciate you coming out. We decided to do a town hall in the community because there's so many people who don't have access to the internet, and we wanted to give the opportunity for people who don't have access to the internet to come out and hear about this very, very important proposal. If you sign up on our sign-up sheet, you will continue to get information, and this session will be recorded, is being recorded, and so you'll be able to listen to it online. So before I begin, there may have been some misconceptions about what this town hall is about. This is not about Eric Adams' indictment. If you were coming for that, this is not what it is. This is about the city of Yes text amendment changes that he has been putting in place since the beginning of his mayoralship. So, and is going to talk about that. However, his indictment does affect it, and we'll talk about the effects that his indictment does have on the city of Yes. But the way that we're going to do this is we're going to just have a conversation between myself and Professor Angotti. I know Professor Angotti for about 10 years. He came into this community when we first had a proposal to rezone Empire Boulevard, Nostrand Avenue, Rogers Avenue, Bedford Avenue, Franklin Avenue, and Flatbush Avenue. There was a major proposal where we were going to get heights very similar to downtown Brooklyn. And I was completely ignorant. I had no idea what zoning was. I didn't know anything. And I was kind of going along with what all of the elected officials were kind of saying to me and to the people. And then we found this gem. And truly he was a gem. I'm an educator by trade, or was. I used to be a kindergarten teacher. And so I do believe in education. And what we were told was that there is somebody out there who can give us information about zoning and explain it to us and let us know what exactly is the truth behind it. And that's where Professor Angotti came in. So I just wanted to have him introduce himself to you.
Hi, Tom Angotti here. I started out doing many things in life, but eventually became an urban planner and got a PhD, a doctoral degree in urban planning. I taught urban planning a lot of different places, Harvard, Columbia University, Pratt Institute, and I wound up at CUNY, City University of New York, where I started the Center for Community Planning and Development. And happily retired about 8 years ago. But I'm still in tune with things going on in New York City. I was born in Brooklyn, so I feel right at home. And I'm seeing what's happening to Brooklyn, for better and for worse. A lot of it's for worse lately. New development that erases entire neighborhoods or large portions of neighborhoods, and historic neighborhoods. So that's who I am. I worked for the city planning department for 5 years in the Brooklyn office of city planning. So I'm sort of schooled in both the theory and the practice. When I worked with city planning, I got a lot of people nervous because I took seriously the idea of providing information to community boards, to people who are interested in housing, planning, zoning, issues that affect their communities. I got in trouble for all of that, but I retired happily and went on to be a full-time educator. I retired from that some 7 years ago, but I stay active in things.
The first thing I think is important, Professor, is to give us a history of zoning in New York City, because we want to just kind of give you a context before we delve into the city of yes. You have to know exactly what the backstory is. So can you just give us a history of zoning, how it came into play?
Yeah, that's a good question, because if you start looking at the regulations, there's a 12-volume set of zoning rules that most planners don't understand, and very few lawyers understand it. But there is actually a whole school of lawyers who understand it better than anybody else, and including anybody else in government. Why? Because zoning is there for developers to massage and manipulate, to allow them to do what is in their interest, in their financial interest. Zoning started in 1916, so it's been around for more than 100 years. Why was it started? Well, there was a big issue going on around the latter part of the 19th century about doing large-scale planning in New York City. There had just been a merger of the 5 boroughs in 1898, sorry. The 5 boroughs got together in one city, and there was a subway system going between boroughs that would eventually reach into all of the boroughs. So there was a call for planning. Central Park had been planned, and a lot of people were inspired by, wow, this is large-scale planning. We should do more of that. What stopped it? Real estate. Real estate developers did not want anybody telling them what land they could buy and what they could develop. So other cities actually adopted the requirement that they do a master plan, that they look into the future, 10, 20, 30 years, and plan in a way that you couldn't do if all you did was regulate individual developers one by one, deciding what was in their financial interests. So the city government decided, and this was after the merger of the 5 boroughs into one city of New York, they faced the prospect of doing a master plan for the 5 boroughs. Real estate didn't want that. So what do? They create the City Planning Commission and the City Planning Department and zoning. Zoning is a series of rules that tell developers for each piece of land that is regulated by the zoning rules, what can be built, how much, how high you can go with the building, what you can't build, and that's basically what it does. It controls. It does not look at services. It does not look at whether the schools are able to support development. It does not look at the quality of life. It only looks at square feet. How much you can build, where you can build it, how high you can go, how wide you can go, how much yard space you have to leave in front or in back or on the side. And so it's a perfect system where landowners in New York City, the landowners are investors, real estate people. They can change the zoning so they can build more They can build higher, they can do whatever's in their financial interest. Neighborhoods, not part of it. City Planning Department doesn't deal with neighborhoods. Zoning doesn't deal with neighborhoods. They deal with individual pieces of land and accumulated blocks of land which they can zone comprehensively, but not based on any comprehensive plan. So the City Planning Commission, which is the appointed body, controlled by the mayor, by the way. The majority of members of the City Planning Commission are appointed by the mayor. Borough presidents each appoint a member, but the majority are under the control of the powerful mayor. And so a mayor can kill a proposal to change the zoning or can make it happen. So it's a highly concentrated planning structure and controlled by a top-down governmental system controlled by the mayor and the mayor's appointees. The mayor appoints the majority of the members of the City Planning Commission, and the City Planning Department, which is the staff, who they come into work 5 days a week. They're urban planners. Sorry to say, some of them are my former students who went the wrong way, but actually a few of them have gone the right way, but very few. And so the whole apparatus of the City Planning Commission, the City Planning Department, is geared towards changing zoning, creating new zoning rules, has no comprehensive vision of the future of the city. It's all block by block, piece by piece, responding to developer interest. So when land values go up in your neighborhood, real estate investors discover that the potential future value of that land is much greater than the value that it would be if they simply followed the existing zoning. And they go to City Hall and they say, oh, we can't develop this piece of land because we can't make, look at my calculator here, it tells me we can't make enough money this way. We need a rezoning. We need to increase the ability to build more, to build higher, to build wider, and to eliminate those annoying things like open space and these other things that are taking land away from developers. So that's what zoning is. We are the only major city in the United States that has never done a comprehensive plan for the future. Why? Because we have zoning. You don't need planning for zoning. Zoning is the perfect tool for the real estate industry because you can massage it whatever way you want to meet the immediate needs of the investors, who are now not just New York City investors, they're global investors, money's coming from all over the world. Why? Because this is the prime environment for making big bucks off of buying and selling land and building buildings.
The next thing is I wanted to, before we're still on topic, people. We wanted to talk about community involvement. We know that the uniform, if you open up your packet to that first page, there's a list of terms there. So if we're talking and you used to hear us say something that you're not sure what it means, just look at it's alphabeticalized. So just look at that. Like if we say City Planning Commission, it has a definition of what the City Planning Commission is. So it's alphabeticalized. So that way you could follow along with us, because sometimes the language can get a little technical. Okay, so now that we know that zoning is in place, we know that the City Planning Commission is basically an entity that's controlled by the mayor. In the 1970s, there was a change, right? There was a movement by the people where they wanted to have more say over what was happening in their communities. They wanted to have more say over the land. And so the Uniform Land Use Review procedure came about. But what is the City of Yes proposing to do with that? First, explain to us the process of the Uniform Land Use Review procedure. It was called ULUP. And then if you can just tell us a little bit about what the City of Yes is trying to do with that process.
Okay, Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, otherwise known as ULUP, was instituted in the 1970s, 1976, I believe it went into effect. And being a student of history, I can't separate it from the many struggles of neighborhoods to get control over the land, especially low-income communities of color. Remember, this is the 1960s and 70s. The civil rights movement was at its peak of activity in not only New York City, many cities. And one of the big issues was displacement. The federal and the city and state urban renewal programs, which we used to call Negro removal, were destroying neighborhoods that had low rent housing, mostly rental housing, so people didn't have the protection of ownership. But even those that were owned by homeowners were vulnerable because the city government could take the land using what's called the power of eminent domain, the power to take control of private land as long as they proved it was, in quote, in the public interest. Who determines what the public interest is? The mayor and the folks in power. There are a lot of court cases here that contested urban renewal. There were a lot of neighborhood struggles back in the 70s. The Young Lords and Black Panthers were involved in those, and many neighborhoods fought against urban renewal. So the civic leaders in the city decided it was time to stop the fighting and create a system whereby land use changes or changes in neighborhoods could be reviewed in a democratic process. And the result of that was the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, otherwise known as ULURP, instituted in 1976. And it created a process whereby proposals to change zoning had to go through this 7-month-long process that included community boards, which were newly created. And by the way, community boards, for better and for worse, are there because of the civil rights movement. The civic leaders watered down the desire and the demand for community participation by creating the community board system, which is way underfunded, which does not have the power or capacity to level the playing field when it comes to new development or existing development. And so I think it's important to understand that history and not blame dysfunctional community boards on the communities themselves. This is the hand they were dealt with. And community boards are the weakest. They're way underfunded. They're the weakest of the partners in the land use review procedure. Every zoning change, every change in land use has to go through this 7-month-long process. But the community board is the weakest has the weakest vote because the mayor has the final vote. The city council is also strategic and very important, and up until recently, you could depend on the city council to vote along with the mayor. But the city planning commission, the majority are appointees of the mayor. So that whole system, which is very frustrating to many of us, is structural. In other words, it's built into, it was built that way. It was built to be dysfunctional. And it was built to downplay and ignore the voices of people living and working in communities.
And yet, I have to say that at some times the community board does have power, right? For example, when we're talking about doing a district-wide rezoning, and that means a rezoning where you're taking a whole large swath of land. In that case, you have to get the request from the community board. And 10 years ago, there was a request like that coming from this community board, CB9. So tell us why that is. Why is it that the community board basically is powerless except for when they submit a request?
Yeah, being powerless or less powerful doesn't mean they don't play a role. Community boards, once they were created, in this uniform land use procedure, which is a 7-month-long process, community board is one of the first steps in the whole process. Community board gets to vote, and they can vote for or against, but they're not the determining vote. And also, community boards are appointed by city council members and the borough president, who may or may not be sympathetic to the voices from the communities. And so, city planning department, around the 1980s, and this is the other important historical part of the story. In the 1980s, there was a resurgence in the civil rights movement and charter change in the city charter, which is the constitution of the city of New York. And the environmental justice movement and the civil rights groups were proposing that every community board be empowered to do their own plan. And real estate fought against this, but they lost. And we had a movement for community-based planning. We started doing research and found there are approximately 100 community plans. Some were only a block or two, some were half of a community board or a fourth of a community board, but these were grassroots inventions that people got together and said, this is what we want. Well, the empire struck back. The city planning department said, oh, we believe in community planning now, we'll help you do your community plans. But even better, we can change the zoning in your neighborhood so you can get some of the things that you want. So we'll work with the community board to develop proposals. And they show up at the first community board meeting, and it's all done. They come in with the proposal. Or they say, I'll tell you what, we're going to do a 6-month-long study, and we want you to work with us. And so we can hear your ideas and all that. I know, because I used to work for this organization, the criminal entity. The thinking was, we'll work with you to develop the future of your neighborhood and community, and we'll produce this plan, which is a zoning plan, because they don't do anything else. They can't give you a plan that includes building a new school or building anything that involves a capital expenditure. Oh, that's the mayor's office, that's not us. You're a planner, and you're not taking into account the future needs. You're changing the zoning so you can have a 3 times, 4 times growth in the community, creating the need for more schools, and you can't study the need for additional schools. So anyway, it was a charade, and that's why people said, we're going to do our own plans, and we're going to take into consideration all of the consequences of plan changes and zoning changes. And that's been the struggle. And I'm sorry to say, when our billionaire mayor, Michael Bloomberg, when he became mayor, he did everything possible to take the air out of the community planning movement, and successfully managed to bury the community planning movement.
So I just want to piggyback on that. What we saw in the past 15 years is that every community plan that was developed by a community, what the Department of City Planning did was take that plan and then replace it for its own plan. And then when the community board voted against it, they went ahead and approved it anyway. So what we learned here in CB9 is that you just can't let it happen. You can't let the process start, because once you let the process start, then you have no power at the end of the day. And so many other community boards found this out, like Soho NoHo created their community plan. They gave it to the Department of City Planning. The Department of City Planning threw it in the garbage, and they replaced it with an upzoning. And they voted against it, and it still is not law. Gowanus is the same thing. Anybody who's been down to Gowanus lately, you see all the development going on. There was supposed to be a plan to take care of the sewage, and now it's just all development there. And again, that community board voted it down, and it went into. So the beginning of a study is really the beginning of a rezoning. And once you do it, once you get a study, and once the community board agrees to a study, that's the end of the fight. Because you have no more power. Your power is either to say no to a study or to say yes, and your community will be upzoned and will look like Kiwanis and will look like downtown Brooklyn, because that's what they want in this community. So I just wanted to go a little bit into the City of Yes. Now, the City of Yes began as soon as Eric Adams became the mayor of New York City. Frank Carone is a lawyer, and he was his right-hand man, chief of staff, for 1 year. He was his lawyer. Now, I don't know how many people know about MTOPP, but we have filed a lawsuit against the development project that was being proposed along the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. How many people know about that? Great. Because we filed a lawsuit against Frank Carone. And Frank Carone was representing the developers. And we did a hell of a job. We did a hell of a job. And it was, but Frank Carone knew all the laws, right? And they were breaking all kinds of laws. And so that's why we won in the lower court with that. So when Frank Carone became Eric Adams' chief of staff, which is his right-hand man, right? The second person in power in the mayor's office, he got together with all of these real estate and corporations and all of these CEOs, and he said, what would you like to change in the zoning laws? How would you like to save money? And a lot of the arguments that we had in our lawsuit, that we said that they were breaking the law, those were some of the changes that were being proposed. So they gave a wish list to the biggest money-making real estate corporations and said, well, what would you like? They came up with, what is it, 180? Was it 180 proposals? It was crazy. And they developed a committee called BLAST. Literally, it was called BLAST, like blasting your way into communities. And they came up with 3 subsets. And the 3 subsets, one subset was carbon neutrality, where they were demanding that that developers and property owners do environmentally safe things. That went through a process and now into law. They had the second one called the economic opportunity. And this was to allow businesses to be able to put manufacturing into commercial spaces and put commercial spaces into residential spaces. It was really a deregulation of commercial and manufacturing. And then the third one, which is the one that we're talking about today, is the housing tax amendments. And this is the biggest one. And this is the most controversial one. Because all of that zoning that has been in place for the last 100 years, they want to remove a lot of those provisions. And they want to get rid of a lot of those things. And so we're here to talk about that in particular. Okay, so one of the things that they wanted to do inside of the city of Yes is really get rid of the EULA process. They decided that instead of having the EULA process, they want to be able to make all of those changes to the zoning and just allow the Department of City Planning and other agencies to agree to them. They call it discretionary actions. And so it would never come in front of the community board, it would never be a hearing, the community board would never have to agree to it. They could just go to the Department of City Planning and say, hey, I want to change this. And then it would be allowed. So there is, in this body of law, there's the removal of the community voice. And so they can do a lot more things than they can do now without the community being involved at all. You will not even be notified of these things. They will just be able to ask the city agency, which is controlled by the mayor, and they will get what they want, and they will not have to do it. So we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the other things, like parking mandates. A lot of people are concerned about that, right? There's been a push by the developers making the claim that if they get an opportunity not to have parking, they're going to provide you with more housing. So I just wanted to ask you, Professor, what is your opinion about that particular argument?
Yeah, well, big developers, the high-rise developers, would like to get rid of the parking requirements because they make more money in a city that has a mass transit system with all of its problems. It has a mass transit system. Having a car is not as great it is not as required as it would be in other cities, especially in the centers like downtown Brooklyn, Manhattan, most of Manhattan. Parking is so expensive, but zoning rules that require that there be parking take away from their ability to, per square foot, they make a lot more on building apartments than putting in parking. And so, I think there's a worthy goal there, which is to make New York City less dependent on privately owned cars. However, this is an across-the-board change that doesn't distinguish from neighborhoods that have 1- and 2-story, 3-story buildings and a lot of street space for parking, and where mass transit isn't as extensive as it is, say, in Manhattan, where Manhattan makes perfect sense. You know, the average speed now in Midtown Manhattan is 4 miles per hour. What's going on here? You know, it's not only don't we plan land use, we don't plan transportation, and taking away parking in some new buildings is not going to solve any problems. It's only going to feed into the developer interest, so they can use those square feet to build more high-rent apartments. And so, you know, there's another word for things like this, is greenwashing. Greenwashing. You give the impression that you're doing something for the environment. There is one good thing I have to say about the city of Yes, is as a homeowner in Brooklyn, there are many places where you can't put solar panels on your roof, and because of zoning. I didn't have that problem, so I put solar panels up. It saved a lot of money, and we're facing a climate crisis. We need to do more solar, and we have to point the fingers at City Hall, though, for not having a real plan to deal with the consequences of climate change. It's all been step by step, and we have legislation that requires the use of renewable fuels and renewable energy. The real estate industry is just thumbing their nose at it, saying, oh, it's too expensive, because there's no political follow-up. So anyway, the city of Yes, I think, has a few little details, but it's deceptive to say that that's really part of a green strategy.
Well, one of the concerns that we have about the greenness is the fact that they're proposing to put very tall buildings in the community, and yet that would shadow our community. And if we had solar panels on our rooftops, and yet we wind up with a 50-story building or a 25-story building in our backyard, what happens with that? And that's the problem, right? Because here you're talking about putting the solar panels on 2- and 3-story buildings, but then you want to build 15- and 20-story buildings that will overshadow those. So where goes what happens to that? And there's a contradiction in, you know, the plan, but I do agree about the greenwashing. The other issue that has come up a lot and people have been concerned about, especially in East Flatbush and Flatbush Avenue, where you have a lot of 2- and 3-story homes in R6s, right? We are one of the communities that have, if you walk in our community, you see a lot of 3- and 4-story buildings on our boulevards, on our major streets, Bedford, and you walk in between, you have 2- and 3-story homes, and some of them are detached or semi-detached. And a lot of them are what we call R6 as a term, just a term to tell you how high you can go. And in the city of Yes, they want to take those building lots and they want to increase the billable space by 60%. So right now, and I'll give you an example, right now, if you are in an R6, you could probably build maybe another 3 more. If you have a 3-story house, you probably could build another 3 more stories. Sometimes that might incentivize a developer to destroy and rebuild it, and people have seen that on some of these spaces, you've seen that. But with this new proposal to go 60% higher, you now can get a 12-story building. So you are living in a 2 or 3-story building, the developer buys it and decides to build the 12-story building. And I feel like that really makes us very vulnerable because there are so many homes that have these very short buildings, even on our avenues, everywhere, where we will, you know, we're talking about a destroy and rebuild. What is your position on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really important. Again, I look at this historically. What happened in the de Blasio administration? De Blasio was a good liberal fellow who decided Bloomberg rezoned all these sites for the billionaire developers, but I'm a populist, and so we're going to rezone places like East New York, communities of color that have been ignored. Well, you know, sounds like a good liberal viewpoint. And he goes in, and what does he do? Every one of those rezonings was contested heavily. I'm happy to say, I'm proud to say, that I was part of some of those protests. East Harlem, East New York, in the Bronx, there were a couple of them, and they were all hotly contested by, you know, liberal lawmakers who said, oh, well, now we're doing something for neglected communities. Yeah, you're going to help displace them. And guess what happened? People fought back, and they got rude. Adams comes in to become mayor, and he said, well, we're not going to do that anymore. So he comes up with, he goes and talks to the city planning department. And the city planning department, they are smart. They say, we got you now. Because we know there are a lot of things that need to be changed in the zoning laws that are making it more difficult for developers, big and small. Now, Bloomberg rezoned 40% of the city. De Blasio really stumbled in doing the rest. And so they said, well, we're not going to do any more rezonings. We're going to change the zoning rules so they apply everywhere, all over the city, and it's going to have the effect. So there were a lot of little things like building up, allowing more residential development over commercial, 1- and 2-story commercial buildings. Little things like that, but they would all add up to enormous development opportunities. And I think that's what happened. That's how we got this city of yes, which is kind of a mishmash of changes to the zoning text. Alicia, I think, gave a pretty good outline of how the zoning works. There's the zoning text, which is this huge 12-volume set of rules and regulations that govern zoning throughout the city. And then there's the zoning map. So you can change the map from one zone to another, but it's not so easy to change the zoning text. So city planning, I know because I used to work for this beast, they've been wanting to change the zoning text for years. And so they sit down with, I can just imagine this. I was not there, I can't swear to this, but I can just imagine saying, we got a deal for you. We know all the things that are holding back development around the city. And we can do it without changing the zoning map, which requires going through the uniform land use review procedure, involving community boards, doing public hearings with community people. You can forget all that. All we have to do is change the text. And that's what the City of Yes is. It's a what do you call it, a sneak operation to get all of the things that the city planners have wanted for decades. And of course, and the mayor said, oh, it sounds good to me. You're going to get all these new housing, and we're going to call it a housing plan. I got news for you. It's not going to solve the housing problem. Increasing the number of new housing units is only going to worsen the housing problem, because we don't have a shortage of housing. We have vacant units. About 10 years ago, I was honored to be part of a citywide study in collaboration with Picture the Homeless, which is a nonprofit group. And the goal was to show that there's enough vacant land and buildings in the city to house every single homeless person 5 times or 10 times over. And that's what we showed. And it was a very simple study. The city could have done it themselves. And I was so happy because when it got published and it hit the headlines and everything, I get a call from the city's housing agency. Oh, can we see your methodology? I said, well, go talk to Picture the Homeless. They never got it.
And I just want to piggyback on that. We've been losing people in New York City. We've lost over between 600 to 800,000 people within the last 4 years. People are bleeding. They are leaving New York City. So who hasn't seen development in their community? Raise your hand if you have not seen development happening in your community. Exactly. Everyone has seen development in their community. So you add a mass exodus of people, over 500,000, and then you add all the development that you're seeing. How can we possibly be in a housing crisis, a housing shortage crisis? What happened to those 600, 800,000 people? What happened to all those apartments? Right? And then all the new ones coming, right? So this is not about a housing shortage. This is about an affordability issue. And unfortunately, no new development coming into your neighborhood is going to give you that. We have watched every affordable unit that has come into this neighborhood. CB9, Crown Heights, Prospect Levis Gardens, Flatbush, East Flatbush. And every time they label it affordable housing, it is always above market rate. Right now, there's a proposal against the Book of Botanic Gardens. Their studio is going for $3,100. In our neighborhood, studios start at $1,800 and go up to $2,200. So it's above market rate. So we're talking about affordability here. You don't get affordable, but pro-developers will come into your neighborhood and come into your community board and say, oh, we need housing, we need housing, we need affordable housing. But your city, who fights for that? Crystal Hudson is the person who's in control of that particular development. Did she fight to make sure that you had affordable housing? No. No, she did not. She said it was okay to come into Crown Heights, bring those kind of numbers, and then stand behind, oh, but they're going to create affordable housing. So I wanted to talk about the other thing that is on my mind. And that is, last week I was on the radio, and it was one of those days, this was the morning show at WBAI, and that particular day that I was on, they were talking about the fact that it was a historic day because back in the 1950s, when Board versus Brown was turned into law, where the children were being escorted into the school by the guards. Do you remember? You've seen those pictures, right? You guys know this, right? When they declared that Jim Crow was unlawful, separate but equal was unlawful, and they were forcing integration into the South. And there's a picture of these children surrounded by the army as they were going into the school. Okay. It was my understanding that segregation was unlawful. However, in the city of Yes, they have brought it back. In the city of Yes, inside of the text, it states that if you were going to create affordable housing, they could put it in another place in your community, not on the site that they're developing. So let me say that again. They can get a site, let's say for example, Boca Botanic Gardens. They want to build there, right? They have affordable housing, that's $3,100, affordable housing. But they don't have to put it in that building. It can go on Utica Avenue. It can go anywhere within your district. And it even could go a half a mile outside your district. Now, I thought that Jim Crow and separation, was unlawful. How many people also thought that was unlawful? A few? Everybody? Sure I did, but it's coming back. And the other thing is the poor door. So I'm going to ask you, Professor, do you remember about the controversy with the poor door? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So, let me see, I have to make sure I get this. I'm not sure I got the history exactly in the right order, but when there was a requirement for a percentage of affordable housing in new development, in order for developers to get the benefits of tax breaks, money in their pocket, if they provide a certain proportion of affordable housing. Well, lo and behold, they started segregating the buildings so that there was a separate entrance for low-income tenants. Right. And so they're living in cheaper apartments. I'm not sure they were cheaper, but in any case, the poor door, and there was a lawsuit against it. I don't know whatever happened to it.
What happened is the state passed a law to make it unlawful because there was a lot of people and there was a lawsuit because again it's segregation, right? It's separate but equal. I mean, come on, this is 2014, 2016? But they were bringing it back. But it's coming back underneath the text amendments. It's back on the books. This is one of the proposals that Mayor Eric Adams is proposing. And that's the problem, I think, with these text amendments as well, is that the race card is being used here, right? You hear Eric Adams talking about how he wants white communities to do their share, to make contributions. But if you look at the text amendment changes, you see that they will actually negatively affect black people more than anybody else. And this is one of those things, right? Where you're actually creating the poor door and bringing it back into legislation. Now, how to get away with that, I don't know. But it is there. So I think,
It's more, can I just add something? It's more than just the doors. A personal note, I have a dear friend who's a colleague in the academic world. And he and his family, people of color, qualified for a lower rental rate under the inclusionary zoning stipulation. So first time I went to visit, I'm looking around, I say, it looks like they put all the colored folks on this floor. He said, yes, exactly, that's what they did.
and that's supposed to be unlawful as well, like where you're segregating within the building. The state also made that unlawful. But there were already developments that had already been done, so this is probably one of those earlier developments that had been done before the law took effect, but it's now coming back underneath the text amendment changes. I think the overall purpose of the City of Yes Housing is really to allow developers to come in and basically build wherever they want to build. They don't care about communities, they don't care about coming in destroying them, they don't care about the existing housing, and they've used the crisis, right? The homeless crisis as a justification. And they've used the idea of, you know, the trickle-down effect. Like if we just had so many more apartments, you know, we're gonna be able to bring that down. However, they're not taking into consideration a concept called speculation. So this is what happened here in this community, so I'll use this community. We are a very valuable community. Why? Because we have transit, right? We're rich in transit. We've got the 2, the 5, the Q, the S. I love this neighborhood. Okay, we are next to the garden. We are next to the park, okay? We are next to the museum. We are next to the zoo. You want me to keep going? Okay, this is the reason why they love this side of the park. And so, when they were about to do a rezoning 10 years ago, they started buying up all the land in the neighborhood. At that time, the land was cheap, right? Because it was, oh my God, you're living in Crown Heights. Oh my God, you're living in Flatbush. So they were buying up the land. And we looked at the deeds, and we looked at the transaction. They started buying in 2012. That's when all the land on Empire started getting built up, where all the land on Franklin Avenue was being built. being brought. And then the idea of the rezoning then took effect, and they wanted to come here and rezone. And if they had gotten their way, they would have made a lot of money, because they were proposing to put 50-story buildings on Franklin Avenue. And they were going to come around the corner to Empire and put 60 and 70 stories. That was going to make them money. And what would happen to our community? Our community would become unaffordable, because all the landlords in the neighborhood would want higher rents. So they will start moving people out. And they've been doing that anyway, right? We know that, but it would have been just more pressure for them to do it. So this text amendment is going to encourage more of that, because they're now going to be allowed to build even higher the existing zoning without any applications. So like Professor Angotti said, this is a text change. So this applies to everybody, everywhere in New York City. So in every community, you're going to be able to build 60% more. And that's going to encourage to destroy and rebuild. If you live next to a transit corridor, if you live next to transit, you're going to even get higher heights, because they say, oh, you live next to a transit. So you can afford to have more people without any support services coming. They're not talking about increasing schools. They're not talking about increasing or supporting fire, soaps, talking about our sewer system. Oh my God, no support for the sewer system. They're not talking about any support services. They're just talking about building tall and building high. That's it. That's all they're talking about. There's one other thing. A lot of these provisions, they want to take away the community's power and not have to go in front of the community. But they will have the Department of Buildings now start to enforce a lot of these new changes. So it will now be up to the Department of the DOB to sit there and do the enforcement. Now we know DOB doesn't do a very good job currently. And so you're going to get them to do even more work without any support. They're not increasing their staff, they're not giving them any more money. But a lot of these provisions will now have to, instead of it coming in front of the community to ensure that it's going to happen, it will be the Department of Buildings that will now have to enforce all these new changes. So now we're just going to give you, we're going to have another guest coming up, and she's going to talk about affordable housing. And this is a very important, the reason why we're going to talk about the affordable housing issue, and you have a page in your packet that focuses on that, because that has been the key justification for these text amendments. Every time you hear someone support the city of Yes, or somebody supporting a comprehensive plan in your neighborhood, or supporting a study to get affordable housing, to get increasing housing, is because we have to do affordable. So I would like to introduce you to LaShawn Ellis. Come on up. She is a member of the Flowers Lovers Against Corruption, and she could probably introduce herself, right?
Hi, good evening. My name is LaShawn Ellis, and I am a member of FLAC, Flower Lovers Against Corruption. I'm also a member of MTOPP. And I have been in this fight, oh goodness, I think just maybe 1 year after Alicia started all of this. And yeah, it's been quite the ride. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the affordability and more about the vacancy. This whole idea of, Mayor Adams saying that he needs to, we need more apartments, we need to build more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Read my notes. I'm not as great as Alicia at doing it off the top of my head. So one of the things that with this whole City of Yes is that the mayor says he wants to create 100,000 more units, because we're in a housing crisis. And it's interesting when you look at how many apartments we actually have in the city that are vacant. There are 200,000 vacant apartments throughout the city. There are a lot of vacant apartments. And 70,000 of those apartments are vacant, truly empty, and they're available to be rented. 123,000 are vacant and are missing key elements for habitability. And some of those components are like refrigerators, missing countertops, maybe missing kitchens, all things that could easily be remedied so that people can inhabit these vacant apartments. We also have 60,000 apartments that are available for occasional use. So whether people are renting them out, for vacation homes, Airbnb is not allowed in the same fashion it used to be, but people may be using it for that. I know there's like a whole film industry where there are apartments that are available for filming, and I'm sure a number of other things, whether it's just people who have investments and they leave their apartments empty to just make investments. So I wanna go deeper into this whole picture of vacancy. When you look at apartments that are below $1,000 a month, there is a vacancy rate of 0.39%. So what does that tell you for lower cost apartments? People ain't going nowhere because it's affordable. Those apartments are not empty. When you look at rents that are between $1,100 and $1,650 a month, there's a vacancy rate of 0.91%. And then you have rents between $2,400 or more a month, and they have a vacancy rate of 3.39%. So the picture here is that apartments that are more expensive tend to be vacant because people can't afford them. So one of the things that would be a better solution to this whole housing problem would be the creation of legislation to enforce the rental of these vacant apartments and renting them at truly affordable rates. If this was truly a concern of our administration. And just as there's warehousing of the storefronts, and we all know this, especially if you live in this community, Rogers, there are a lot of empty storefronts. And you go down, both north and south, and people are just waiting. They're sitting on things and they're waiting for things to change. And the same is happening with apartments. So again, if the city was truly trying to address this housing crisis, they would target populations for this so-called affordable housing. There are people who are making $70,000 or less, with a special emphasis on households that make $25,000 or less. Rents should be about $1,900 a month or less, if you have an annual income of $70,000. And $690 a month if you are, making less than $25,000 a year, because people should not be using all of their income on their rent. Then we call that rent burden, and that's where a lot of people are these days. They're either rent burden or they are, extremely rent burden, where more than 30% of their income is going to rent. And you've got, people who are paying 50% of their income goes to rent. So, let's see. I should have put this on do not close, whatever the heck that's called, but I did not. So, not one apartment being planned under the affordable category of the Coy Housing Text Amendment would actually create housing that would diminish the housing crisis that we're in. And this crisis is not one of supply, it's one of greed, as Alicia and Tom Angotti discussed. Inflating and catering to high-income earners and decreasing the stock of truly affordable housing for low-income earners. So one of the things that changed with this whole housing text amendments when the CPC was getting people to give their opinions of their new plan, it's not like they really care, but one of the takeaways was that they admitted that 80% AMI was not a good number to use because it was not going to help help provide housing to people who really needed it. So what they did was they changed the 80% AMI, the area median income, they changed it to 60%. And that 60% reaches an annual income of $65,220 for a family of one. And just to paint a picture of that, for our community, our area median income is $55,000. So this is still not affordable for our community. Just before I close, if you go to this page, I don't know what page number that is. Okay, page 3 in your packet. To tie into affordability, when there's this, they call it UAP, and it's called the Universal Affordability Preference. And what this is this would allow developers to receive a 20% increase in how much they can develop, like increase in their heights. And this would allow them to create more affordable apartments. But the thing with this program is that it's not mandatory. It's a voluntary program. So developers don't have to do it. They don't have to create this affordable housing in their developments. There are other ways that they can increase their heights. And this UAP program is not a necessity for them to increase their heights. They don't have to create affordable housing. And again, the affordable housing is not truly affordable. So that's really, really important to remember. Like, the term is used, it's abused, and it doesn't mean affordable. So, we take note that this plan, it's like a slice of Swiss cheese. There's just a ton of holes, and it's all to benefit real estate industry. So before I close, I just wanted to take a little look at who some of the stakeholders are. And Alicia mentioned this earlier, that this was a whole, a committee, the BLAST, these BLAST folks. And Sandy Rayburn, who's in the audience and who we've done a lot of work together with, she's Preserve Brooklyn Neighborhoods. She sent us an email with this list of all these 50 plus stakeholders, of all the folks that sat around in a room, deciding how they were going to come and rape and pillage our communities. And some of the names on that list I thought were really interesting, so I just wanted to give a quick share. So you have, these folks all got into their little room to create the City of Yes. You have Sheldon Lobel, who it's a law firm. And we actually, what would you call him? You would. So we were up against this dude. His name was Richard Lobel, and I think he's probably the son of Sheldon, and he's a part of this law firm. And he's also a very big real estate attorney. And we would always have this joke, and Alicia would always be, it's you, and what would you call him? You never called him by his name, and he would always get very offended. But he was on this board. Sorry, it's like a little inside story. But he is big in real estate. We ran into him at a CPC commission meeting where they were trying to get approval for a development over in Park Slope. That's going to be a fill-in. I don't know if people know the building that's on, it's like a complex, and it's on 9th Street and 5th Avenue, like between 5th and 4th. And there is going to be an infill building there, where they're going to fill in the space, the open spaces in that development, with another huge development. And this gentleman, Lobel, was there, trying to bid for his new development and telling all sorts of lies about, how it wasn't going to destroy the building that's already there, and so on and so forth. But he's on this BLAST committee. You also have, you've got the Real Estate Board of New York Real Estate Chamber, the Durst Organization, which is a long-time real estate family. They're also kind of a criminal element. I'm sure some people have heard that name. And the list just goes on. All of these people who are highly connected, whether they're attorneys or they just, dealing with real estate, or they make their money in real estate. So already it's a pretty shady situation. But I just want to close in saying that one of the things to remember, and it's so great to see so many people, is that the safest communities are organized communities. And people should, be aware of what's going on and what's coming down the pike, and don't always listen to the guys that come in their fancy suits and try to tell us stories about how this is going to be great for us. Please support community organizations, ask questions, do the research, but land is important, and we need to take care of it and protect it. And I just want to say again, thanks for coming, and please continue to show up, and fight for your homes.
And thank you, LaShawn. Really appreciate it. Where are you going? Sit right there. Where are you going? I would like to now introduce you to Rod Herbert. He's a new community board member from CB9, and I'll let him give you some more information. The way that we're tying Mr. Herbert's presentation is his own personal experience with the Department of Buildings and how the city of Yes is trying to now make the DOB the people who will enforce a lot of these changes. And he's going to give you his own personal experience about what's happening right now in the community regarding that issue.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? How is everybody doing today? That's what we want to hear. We need the energy. The energy is what's going to take us far and beyond. All right. So, again, my name is Rod Herbert. Just a little bit of my background. I am a retired, yes, I'm retired, as young as I look. I am a retired utility manager, right, for 30 years. I have experience in emergency response, engineering, facilities management, wastewater treatment, construction, everything under the sun. So, and I'm happy to share my experience with everybody here, as well as the CB9 community, Alicia, everybody, because information is power. Okay, and so that's what, never stop learning. All right, so grab as much information as you can. All right, so now, as far as what Alicia was talking about with my experience with the buildings department, I have a very interesting story I'd like to share with everybody. All right, so on the corner of Midwood Street and Troy Avenue, there is a building that is being constructed, an office building. It was supposed to be, from the filing that I saw, residential and commercial. So one day I was walking by the building and I said, let me start reading all of these placards and permits that are here, because I'm very concerned about this building being built here. And it just changes the face of the neighborhood. So then I found out that this one placard states that it's fully commercial. And I said, that's odd. So later on I went home and got on the DOB website. And then I start pulling the drawings, because I'm finding things that just didn't add up. So just to make a long story short, the building is approximately 19,000 square feet of commercial space, usable commercial space. What the architect or developer did, on the drawings, not within the filing, but on the drawings, they removed 10% of the commercial space. Once that 10% was removed, they reallocated it as commercial. All right, so that's about 1,900 square feet. That's what's used for commercial. I'm sorry, residence. I'm sorry, residential. I'm sorry. Yeah. So they pulled it out of the commercial space, 19,000 square feet. They put the 1,900 square feet as residential. In doing so, that allows the developer, contractor, architect, whoever, to invoke a waiver. And the waiver is that off-street parking does not have to be provided. So, what's going to happen next with this building that's being built? They're going to allocate the street for ambulatory parking, and this developer or owner now has his full building where he can rent out all this space, where he's supposed to place 25 spots, give or take, for vehicle use for off-street parking. What bothers me is that the DOB is supposed to protect us. The DOB is supposed to review all of the submissions and the paperwork that is before them. The DOB is supposed to review the drawings and make corrections or send them back to the developer or architect for any correction. I spent 2 hours looking through all of the paperwork. And that's what I found, with some other irregularities. So why didn't the DOB do that? So now here we have the City of Yes, where they're going to streamline all of the processes now. And basically, the DOB will not be able to review all of the issues that are before them or do compliance checks. Now, there aren't too many people that I know that would spend their time when they're retired and sit back and review all the drawings. So now this architect is my new project because I'm following all of his drawings and all of his jobs, and I'm going to find every single one and bring to the DOB. So I did put in a complaint with the DOB, and they're very slow to react. Though it made quick progress from the director of compliance, then it went within 24 hours to the borough commissioner. Then within another 24 hours, it went to the commissioner of all of DOB, and then it stopped. So the DOB now is my project, and I'm going to follow through. Because I need to understand, not know, but understand how they did not perform a thorough review. So, involvement is key. I found this because I got involved. There are many things that people see and they just walk by without questioning it. If you do not have a questioning attitude, then there are problems. You have to evolve to have a questioning attitude. If you do not, you become extinct. So when everybody walks out of this room, that's the expectation, that everybody has a questioning attitude. We need people to get involved in the community board. Now, I'm one person. I came here from an environmental community board meeting, and I split my time to be here because why? It's important. And when you sit down, you take a look at the masses of people that are here right now, there should be more. When you take a look at the people that are here, and this is a rhetorical question, do you go home and just go to bed? Or do you think how you can get involved in your community that is going to change? So, I'm involved, other people involved, we're here, we're involved, but I'm saying, and I speak for everybody here on this panel, that we need the involvement of the community, not for the community to come up afterwards when things are late and complain, because nothing gets done. We need to be proactive, not reactive. Thank you very much.
Now, the city, all over New York City, meetings like this are happening because the City of Yes is a blanket, overall, everyone is being affected by it. There are different aspects in each community that affect us differently. And unfortunately, the city, because it's just this very broad stroke, they don't take into consideration what's happening in your particular neighborhood. For example, also what's happening in your neighborhood, in Rod's neighborhood, is the fact there are 11 towers being planned within a 5-block radius. 11 towers. And yet the city of Yes will come in and allow even more damage because the existing low-rise community will now become, from the 2 and 3 stories, will now be 12 stories. So it would match the towers that are coming up that are about 12 to 15 stories. And this is the plan, right? The plan is to have this without having to ask. Those 11 towers are coming because it was a process, and it took them a long time, 10 years to get this process to happen. With the city of Yes, there is no more process. All they have to do is buy the home, and they can destroy it, and they can build up. That's the danger that we are in. We are in danger of losing our community. The way that it looks, the people who live in here, we are in danger, because any property that they see that they want, that's low rise, and they can bring it high, they're going to buy it and do that. So it's really important. On page 2, please turn to page 2. I just list some of the changes. There's 1,300 changes to the city text amendments. 1,300. I just list a whole bunch of them that has nothing to do with affordable housing. Has nothing to do with it. These are things that they want to change. And we don't have the time to go through every one of these, as you can see. This is a lot. These are a lot of changes that I pointed out. So it is important for us to demand at this point in time that our city elected officials say no to this plan. It's too massive. It will destroy our communities. And they are not going to keep our communities safe. We are the most vulnerable communities. Communities of color are the most vulnerable communities that will be affected negatively by this development, by the city of Yes. So the last page, which is page number 4, not the last page, but the second to last page, is the destroy and rebuild model. And this is what most communities are concerned about. Every community that has voted against the city of Yes and organizing, they are concerned about this. Is the destroy and rebuild model. And almost every piece of property in our community can be affected by this proposal, this type of development. So please think about that when you go home and you go in your neighborhoods. Look at your 3 or 4 story buildings and realize that one day that building can be gone and a 15, 20 story building can be in its place. So think about that. And then, what do? You guys right now can do something very proactive. Turn to that last page. The last page, right now. There are 3 QR codes. I'm asking you to get involved right now today. I'm asking you to take your phone out. Take your phone out. Put the QR code. You guys know how to do QR codes, right? You take your phone. Can I see your phone? Oh, no, we could do everything. You turn on your phone, you go into your settings, you put your phone, can I do that? Your camera, I think you have to open it up. You put on your camera, you click on it. If you want to read the email, read it and send it. You're sending that to your elected officials. And you're telling them, I'm going to do the first one. Okay, there it is. That's a 3-step submission process. I don't know. Accept all cookies. Ready to submit protest. I don't know what this is. I'll submit. I don't know. Are you getting it? Are you guys getting it?
No, the first one says like need tickets. And it gives you like event stuff.
All right, you gotta click on no events or something. You have skip advertisement. Guys, skip the advertisement. Do not click on the advertisement. It is a free program, so they have that first. So skip that. Please don't do it. Skip the advertisement. There's a click that says skip the advertisement, and it will send you straight to...
Yeah, just make sure you skip.
Right, skip it. It will send you straight to an email, and that email is going directly to your city council person. Because that's where these text amendments are now. They are in the hands of your city council. They are the ones who have to vote on it. They have November the 24th, I believe, is the day in which they vote. Currently, there are 18 city council people who are definitely have come out against the city of yes. We need 8 more city council people to make it 26. We're trying to get Rita Joseph to say no, a straight no. We don't want to negotiate. We're trying to get, who else is on that list? Rita Joseph, Crystal Hudson to say no, and Darlene Mealy to say no, and Ose to say no. And that email that you just sent is telling them to say no. Now, we created the challenge. It said, take the challenge. So now that you've done that, we're asking you to make 5 copies of this page. 5 copies. And we're asking you to talk to your neighbors and ask them to do the same thing. Ask them to do each QR code, send it off, and ask them to take the challenge. So you give them a flyer, you say, do this, and you find 5 more people in your neighborhood. It doesn't take a lot, people, but you need this. You need to put pressure on your elected official. You have to put pressure on your elected official. This is a city council issue. You have to put pressure, because if you do not put pressure on your elected official, this is going to pass. And then you're going to be complaining to your elected official when you see somebody next door to you buy up that property next door to you and start doing damage and start shadowing, and you paid all that money to put the solar panels, and all of a sudden you got shade on it. You're going to be complaining. Or you're going to be complaining about how you have this beautiful block and all of a sudden you got this monstrosity. Or the people that will be pushed out of these homes. We have to stop this before it happens. I cannot tell you enough. There is you can't fight this once it happens. We've been fighting in our community for 10 years, and we can tell you, after multi-million-dollar lawsuits, you stop it before it begins, people. That's your power. Stop it before it begins. You must stop this. You must do something about it. So this is a concrete plan. Do it.
Did they go through?
Did it go through, guys? Did it go through?
Tell them to sign their names. The third one.
Oh yeah, bottom. The third one is a petition.
Oh, the third one is a petition.
Yeah.
The third one is a petition. So the first 2 are emails, so you just sign them off. You don't have to put your name in it. But the third one is a petition, because we are doing a petition against a proposal. They want to do a comprehensive plan in our community, a study to create. Tell me what they're going to create. Let me hear it. Okay, right, affordable housing. They got our land use committee filled with pro-developers, all willing to sit down and create a comprehensive plan so that we can get more affordable housing. They want to take Empire, they want to take Flatbush, they want to take Bedford, they want to take Rogers Avenue, and they want to make a special district, quote unquote, where they will have the opportunity to build on those avenues. This is on top of the city of yes. Because greed there's no limit to greed, okay? There's no limit to greed. So you have to say no to the zoning, and you have to get involved. Oh, we're about to start the Q&A, so people can come up and ask questions. Yep.
So, Alicia was saying, this is our power, we have power. Oh, one more. Hey, one more. Mr. Gopher. That we do have power. She was, I can't remember, something sparked this story. But the Sheldon Lobel I was telling you about, he's in the Blast crew, he's buddies with Eric Adams. The Richard Lobel fellow, when we were up against him in court, we made a big ruckus, and they all kind of came to court, and they looked at us, and they were like, oh, this is gonna be a piece of cake. And we had them in court for how many years? 4 years? 3 years? They lost a lot of money, and they realized how powerful a small group of people really was. Like we were a little powerhouse. And when we ran into Richard Lobel downtown at the City Planning Commission, we didn't recognize him because he had grown a beard. And I was looking at him and I was like, oh no, I know that face, And I was like, that's Richard. And Alicia goes, no, that's not him, I want to see him. And literally, I realized it was him because he looked back at us, he saw Alicia's hair, because you can't miss it, and his hand started shaking. So I want, these people, they're so big, they're powerful, but we were able to scare them. So please, we need more people.
Yes. So I think that, so please don't forget that page back here. When we send you an email and we ask you to come out, please come out. You don't know how effective it is just to fill up a small room at CB9. It is very, very effective. We need people to come out when we ask you to come out. We are organizers. You know you can trust us because we're not trying to get an election. We're not trying to raise, we all work for free. We're doing this a service to the community. And the community has to think about following us and coming out when we ask you to come out to these meetings, especially with this new plan that's being proposed by Eric Adams, the borough president. So now let's get to Eric Adams. I just want to get to Eric Adams before we start asking questions. Yes, Eric Adams is in trouble, right? We know that, right? I've been talking to people in the community as I've been flying, and the black community is really, we're hurt by what this happened. We're very sad that this is a black man who was put into power, and now he has a trail of corruption. A lot of us, however, were not necessarily surprised because we know that the politics is a dirty game, and we know people can go down the wrong path. We've seen him surround himself with a lot of criminal elements, so we wasn't exactly surprised. Now, as political activists, we're a little bit not even surprised, but we were waiting for the day, to be honest with you. We were waiting for the day because we saw a lot of things that were happening. But this gives us an opportunity. His indictment gives us an opportunity to put pressure on your local city council person, because normally it's the mayor who puts pressure on your city council person, right? They make promises, oh, I'm gonna give you money, or I'm gonna help you with your career. But Eric Adams is now just trying to survive. He can't even think about putting pressure on anybody else because he's trying not to go to jail. So this gives us a great opportunity to put pressure on your city council person to get them to say no. Now, communities across the board are demanding that the city of Yes be postponed until a full investigation is done. A full investigation. And we should be demanding the same thing, right? Now, if that's gonna happen, we don't know, but we need our elected officials to stand up with us and say no to the city of Yes. We have not heard that from Rita Joseph. We have not heard that from Crystal Hudson, okay? And we need to hear that. We need to hear our elected officials stand up and say no. And I'm saying this despite the fact that Rita Joseph has helped us with this. She provided us with the M61, she provided us with the tables, and we appreciate that. But what we need her to do more than just give us some space and a table is we need her to say that she's going to vote no. We need our elected officials to say no to this plan. Not to modify it, not to change, do a little tweaking. We need this plan to die. Okay? We need it to die, and that's the position that we're taking. So, you guys want to have any last words before we open it up to Q&A? Okay, so if you have a question, please come up.
Get snacks in the back.
What happened? Oh yeah, there's some snacks in the back if you guys wanted. There's some water in the back. I know some people wanted to go to the, what was that, the debate. So I know people want to go to the debate. So you're welcome to go to the debate now. But we will be here for another 45 minutes answering questions. Okay?
Greetings. How are you doing, Alicia? How are you doing, Professor? How you guys doing? You know, when I got the email, I make sure that I send out an email blast trying to hoping that we could pull it through. And it's very shocking to see that the people in the community have not woken up yet. With all the things that are going on, right? People are still sleeping, right? We've been devastated by the developers and the so-called investors who are literally taking our rights away. And it's time that we, the people, stand up. We are the government. We need to speak up, stand up, and say what we need, what we want in our community, right? They talk about rezoning, right? When they speak of rezoning, they get in their little rooms and they make their plan, and then when they come to us, they've already made their plan, and they pretend that they are going to favor us and give us a little token. But guess what? They already made their plans. So we have to be proactive, like Alicia said. Before I even go forward, let me let you guys know who I am. My name is Dr. Bertrand M. Marcus, and I am the community director and advocate for Brooklyn. I'm all over this city, but mainly in Brooklyn, fighting for people to keep their homes. Fighting for people to keep their homes. They're stealing our people's homes with the deed theft, right? They're going into the Department of Finance. I've reported it up to this morning to the district attorney to investigate. And for years, they're not doing anything. They're going into the Department of Finance and changing people's deeds. And also, if your family member died, guess what they're doing? Right? They're waiting until they die, and then they're going to switch the paperwork. Right? We have evidence of it, but our government refused to take any action. Tish James came up to talk about, oh, we're going to fight DTF, and there's nothing being done on these. Nothing. So, I have Ms. Hackett on speaker.
Hey, everybody, listen up. We need a little bit quiet so we can hear what the doctor is saying. Everybody with me? Yes. I can't hear you. Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, doctor.
Ms. Hackett, a developer somehow stole the house next door to her. When I did look at the paperwork and so forth, they literally stole the house. So they started to cut it out. And so to get Ms. Hackett out, and she's still determined not to move from her house, as she's lived there for 30-something years. What they did, they were banging so hard on the walls that it damaged her wall on the other side. and she couldn't get not one elected official to stand with her to see that the atrocities on her property was corrected. On to now, and the guy is still trying to go back now to try to finish what he started. And I'm saying no. So what we did, we put a lien on against them and the property, so we're going to take that property that they're looking to develop on. We will take that property away from them.
Okay, it's really important because we have a line of people that want to ask questions.
I'm going to make it short. Listen, real quick, we have a poverty crisis, right? Even if you're making $60,000 and you pay $37,000 in rent, and out of expenses, I guarantee you, when you do the math and you look, you'll see that each and every one of us in here are below the poverty level. So there's no way that the rent in this city, in Brooklyn especially, should be at the rate they are right now, right?
I really have to, because you've already taken 5 minutes and we have people. So I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I am saying to each and every one of you, right? You can get my number after this, and we can work on strategies, right, to save people from losing their homes, right? So, you know, this is a great forum, and you know, I hope one day Alicia could bring me on site to really lay everything out for the people in this community so that they can get the knowledge that they need to fight against these monsters. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You know, one of the things is that the community board is supposed to be doing that. So if there's any community board members in the audience, one of the things that the community board should be doing is allowing people like him to come to the community board and express his issues and concerns. It's supposed to be a part of presentations. This never happens at our community board. So if you are a community board member, you might want to think about advocating for the people and asking for this type of presentations. Okay. And we're asking people to just ask us questions. I mean, you know, for information that you don't know. I know a lot of people might have a lot of comments that they want to make, but this is really for a Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Based on understanding this whole proposal, would something like that raise the first homeowner's property taxes? For instance, if the house next door is raised up to 20 stories, and then the property taxes on that building is going to be high, or the other building on the block, and then all of a sudden that person who owns the one, like a 2 or 3 family home, their property taxes will go up as well?
Well, yeah, because the value of your property goes up. So
Okay.
yes.
Right, so then
And it is
that's
a
another way
concern
you lose your
for-
home if
right,
you can't
it is.
afford
It is another way.
to pay. And then I wanted to know about if you had tenants in your home, if there were no restrictions, could tenants then start businesses in your apartment,
Oh,
and they're renting from you?
that provision was for the last economic opportunity, and that was one of the provisions that was removed. They are, you know, so technically no.
No.
Yeah, technically.
And I would like to say that when we're talking about making a difference, we need to start thinking bigger than what I've been hearing here. And that is, we need to start putting people on the commissions to sit on those boards. I mean, that's where the power is. That's where we have to start organizing to do that.
Yes, that's a very good
Not just
idea,
going
taking
around
away
it,
the power
but
of the
actually
city.
get on those boards. and
Exactly.
make a difference.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yo,
We gotta do it.
I just want to express my appreciation for Community Board 9 hosting this forum.
Community Board 9 did not host this forum. This is being hosted by a community group called MTOPP, the Movement to Protect the People.
Thank you.
We've asked Community Board to do this and they refused.
Okay, so let's expose that. Thank you for clarity. So I'm with the Uhuru movement, and we understand that self-determination is the highest expression of democracy. So based upon what you explained here, would you characterize the city of Yes as an attack on the black people's right to have community control over housing? Would you characterize the city of Yes as an extension of colonialism? Just like the Lenape, the original inhabitants of the land were displaced, as they're striving to use the same tactics and strategy to displace the colonized African population here in Brooklyn?
For centuries, it's always been about land, right? Didn't they go into other countries and take over their land? It's the same process, it's the same philosophy, it's the same thought pattern that has been a part of our world for centuries. Yes.
So with regards to the mayor's office, can we characterize it as them being hostile to the black community, whether it's Mayor de Blasio, Mayor Dunsberg, or Mayor Adams? Can we anticipate that the next mayor that comes into office is going to continue to enforce these hostile policies that work against our democratic right to have community control of our housing?
I wish I could say I'm optimistic that it's going to change. It ain't going to change unless we organize and make it happen. Look, this is the real estate capital of the world. Land is money. And unless that formula changes, our communities aren't safe and protected.
Finally, if we don't have community control over housing, do we have real democracy? If the people don't control their housing?
I mean, we should think about that, right? Because that is a thought. Do we have democracy if we don't have control over our land? That is a thought. Let's think about that.
I'll just say on that, we only have democracy if we show up. There's sometimes elections or sometimes almost nobody comes to some of these meetings. Sometimes there's more developers in the meetings than us. And so then the only way democracy can operate is if we're actually there.
Can I just respond to that? Because I think you're right. 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting of the Land Use Committee in my community, at my community board. It was predominantly white males with one black male sitting at that board, at that committee, making decisions about your neighborhood. Most of these people were pro-real estate people. I sent out emails, I sent out an email blast, I asked people to show up, and only 10 people showed up, and just me and one other person shut that meeting down. We literally shut it down. We said, no, this is an unlawful meeting. So what they planned on doing the next meeting is they're gonna have the cops there ready to arrest me. But if you had 20 people all shutting it down, they couldn't arrest 20 people. So we need to start becoming more active and involved, because those men are sitting at the table ready to sell your community. And when we tell you to come out, you need to start coming out. You need to start coming out. If we tell you to shut down a meeting, you need to start shutting down some fucking meetings. Okay? Because that's democracy. Is when you take power. Okay? Because they're not going to give you. You got to take your power.
That's right.
So they're sitting there with this committee deciding your fate, your homes, your neighborhood. How are you letting that happen?
They don't live there.
How are you letting that happen? I'm just like saying to the black community, how are you letting that happen? How are you letting that happen? I sent them a mass email and said, hey, they're taking over. We should have 50 people yelling at them saying, no, you can't do that. Guys, you gotta wake up. Wake up and start coming out. How can they possibly come into a committee? Do you think that Park Slopes would let 8 black men sit on their land use committee making decisions for them? Right, you laugh, right? So why are you letting 8 men do that in your neighborhood? Why are you letting it happen? Why are you letting it happen? Right, you laugh because you know that that's not possible, right? You know that Park Slope was not letting that happen. So why are we letting it happen? So you're on my email list. I send you an email saying that the land use committee is about to start up again, and there are 8 white men making decisions for this black community, and there's only 1 black person on that committee. You better show up, and you better shut that meeting down. You better not let that meeting happen, because every time you let a meeting happen, you are validity, you are validating their power over you. Validating. Get involved. This is not just about educating you, this is about demanding that you get involved. Because you won't have a community. You won't have a community. You won't be here in this community if you let them do what they want to do in your neighborhood. Now there's a meeting coming up too, the 2nd Tuesday of the month in October. Make sure you mark your calendars, make sure you're at that land use committee, make sure you shut it down. You say there will not be any land use committee meeting until we get equal representation. Shut it down. Because that's the effective way. And we know how to do effective. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No worries. I'm on the community board in Bed-Stuy, and so I learned a lot tonight. I just want to say this was a very, very helpful presentation. But just as a personal question, well, I guess 2. What I've heard about zoning is that it's used to restrict developers, and that it's used in a lot of places to keep it as R1. And, but we're hearing this perspective that developers are using zoning to, do a lot more. So perhaps you can speak to, is there a difference, is that other cities, is there a difference there? And my other question is, does this economically all come crashing down? All these developers, they're building all these buildings, we talked about how it's above market rent, everything, is it just going to economically collapse at some point?
Well, the first question, I think there's a short answer to it. This is a settler colonial nation. The land was stolen from people who were the stewards of the land and turned into private property. That's the basis of the law that regulates land, to protect the private property. Now, small homeowners may benefit, but that's not where the real game is. The game is buying and selling land and buying and selling buildings. That's where the real money is made. Our housing, working people's housing, is just an incidental part of it. But it's a highly profitable industry. And unless we do something collectively to return land to be a public responsibility, not the responsibility of every single individual, but a collective responsibility of society. That's what law is supposed to do, but it doesn't, because it protects the individual property owner. And who owns most property? It's the real estate industry, it's the individuals who have the money to buy and sell land, and home ownership is just one means that we have to occupy land. But you don't necessarily have more control over your housing in your community because you're a homeowner. And you don't necessarily have any leg up on the renters, because some of the wealthiest people in the city are renters.
So I hear a lot of people are upset and whatnot. But you have to ask yourself, what are you doing to protect your property if you're a property owner? How is your estate set up? Do you have a trust? These are some of the ways that you can protect your home. All right? And one thing that within our community that we do not do well is estate planning. So I charge everyone in this room, talk to an attorney. If you have property, put it in a trust. You want to protect your property.
Now, I would say that even with the trust, my property is at risk. Why? Because Empire is my backyard. And they plan on building a 50-story building back there. My property is done. I can't protect it. There's nothing I can do. When they start drilling, if they start drilling, and they start creating foundation issues, and they start shadowing, and they start throwing trash because they, you know, in my backyard, I'm powerless. That's why you have to understand when you engage in the fight. You don't engage in the fight when the building is going up, because it makes no sense. You engage in the fight now. Now I want everybody to turn around and look at that woman right behind her. There's an Asian woman right there. Her name is Suki Chung. She is now the chairperson of the Land Use Committee in CB9. And she is now responsible for deciding whether or not black people are going to be on the Land Use Committee in your neighborhood. That's right.
Please ask me if you have any questions. I'm very happy to answer.
She is going to be making decisions for this entire community, whether or not there will be black people on your land use committee in your community. How did that happen? How did that happen?
I'd like to address
How did that happen? How did that happen? Because we're not paying attention. We need to be paying attention. They are taking your homes. She wants to do a comprehensive plan. She stated it. She wants to provide more affordable housing on Empire. She stated it in public, on the record. What are we doing? What are we doing, people? We're allowing this woman who did not grow up in our neighborhood. She does not come from our community. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. She lives in a protected part of this community. She has landmarking, she has this and that, and Prosper Lefferts Gardens. She takes no risk. All the risk is in the black neighborhood, and she's making that decision. There's something wrong with our political structure, and if we don't change it, we're going to be in trouble. You need to be going to that land use committee meeting the second Tuesday of the month, and you need to be making sure that that land use committee reflects you in this community.
Absolutely.
That's what you need to do. I'm giving you something that you can do to make a difference, because if that committee passes a resolution to do a comprehensive plan and submits it to the Department of City Planning, we are done. We are done. We are done. And I know, because I've been in this fight for 10 years. For 10 years I've been in this fight, stopping people like her. You better get involved. You better get involved. Because that's all CB9 has to do is submit a request, and then we are done. And there are enough forces on that board that will say yes underneath the guise of affordable housing.
Very happy to answer any questions.
Okay? And you know who put her there? You know who put her there? The chairperson of CB9. A black man.
No.
Yes, a black man. Stop playing.
He appears to be black.
Stop playing.
He's the blackness leadership class.
You gotta stop doing, race relations politics. You gotta stop doing identity politics. You gotta stop thinking that because a person is a particular race that they're going to support you. Look at their deeds, not the color of their skin, people. Stop looking at the color of your skin. Eric Adams is a pure example of that.
Absolutely.
You're looking at the color of his skin instead of looking at what he's been doing to us and what he's trying to do to us. You gotta get involved. You gotta open your eyes. You gotta come out. I want to know how many people are coming out the second Tuesday of October. How many people? How many people? That's right. Film them, please. Film them, Mr. Foster. Film them, because I want to make sure they're coming out. And they're demanding that land use community be filled with black people. Okay? That's right. 890 Nostrand Avenue. The second Tuesday of October. Okay? It's always the same place, the same time. You're on my email list, I'll send you an email. Get organized, people. Come out. Stop the nonsense. We should not be tolerating this in our community. We have to start taking our power. Okay, I'm sorry.
No apologies, love. The trees in the forest do not call the axe brother because it has a wooden handle. That's right. So it's a strategy.
Yes.
The Vietnamese fought the Vietnamese. The South Africans fought the South Africans. There is no slavery without collaborators. So we have collaborators. And I want to give you a little history. She mentioned, and it's an excellent program because she's really educated. Now I know why. First grade, kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
And you got to break it down because capitalism is designed to destroy democracy, not enhance democracy. And if you know your history, you know the people who wrote the Constitution were all white, male landowners, and most of them slave owners too. So the person who mentioned colonialism, the little gentleman, right on point. So I'm going to address my comment and question to the comrade who spoke about the Department of Buildings. And the reason I wanted to speak about that is because when the high riser went up, diagonally across the street from our block, we noticed instantly the escalation in rats. And then the next thing you know, small homeowners, we got the violations for the rats. I got a $600 citation because of rat droppings. Because the minute they started giving me $300 citations for the rats in my garden, I bit the bullet, cemented it over, and now I have rat droppings on top of the cement of what used to be my front yard full of daffodils and roses. And like the working class song says, you want bread, but you want roses too. I moved to Brooklyn because I wanted a garden. And I can't have the garden. This is what she's trying to make you understand. When they started drilling, the rats were so horrible, you could not drive a car down the street. So if you were a small homeowner, you better pay attention because they'll definitely destroy your quality of life. And it becomes an increasing tax. The next thing you know, the commission is going to be giving you a citation. But worse than that, these high-risers need extra gas pressure. So they tear up your streets. And the company that's responsible is Halleck Construction Company, H-A-L-L-E-K. They are the favorite contractor for National Grid, which comes in to allegedly increase the pressure by destroying your infrastructure in your basement. When they finished the job, I smelled gas. And so we called National Grid. The worker who came said, if you hadn't called us in time, you might be dead now. So what she is trying to make you understand is nobody is minding the store. Nobody is protecting your interests at all. She said there is no support for the infrastructure.
No.
When you're talking about the Department of Buildings, I don't know how to go down there and do what he did. I don't know how to go down there and find out what the contract number is for Howard when they tore up the streets and then National Grid sent workers in to tear up my basement. My basement is a disaster as a result of them just providing pressure for this high-rise building across the street from our development. So you've got to come out. And if you think this won't affect the apartments that you're living in as renters, you're crazy. She's already told you. There is a big infrastructure that comes with construction of a high-rise building. And you're going to pay for it down the line. So we do have to come out. We do have to organize. What my block association did was we bought the most bright garish paper we could, and we put it on all of the gates, and we said, call the transportation, the health department especially, and the Department of Buildings into account to protect your interests. They are pushing the expense that these real estate people should be paying. They should have paid for the displacement of the rats. We went to them as a community board. And I don't understand why we don't see more community board members out here. Because that is our job. That is our community charge. That is our community obligation to protect our neighbors by letting them know. So if you're a small homeowner and they're giving you these frivolous summonses for the rats, that's not your problem. That's the city's problem. If you've got a high-rise at one end of your corner and a high-rise at the other end of the corner, the rats are going to be displaced. When they come into your street to tear up your street, you better know who the contractor is. You better demand that the community board at least send an observer like this gentleman who understands and can follow through on the architect that made all these plans. It's called community control. And I'll conclude with this. One of the things she said, if you don't know history, you couldn't put it in context. She said the community boards were not designed to give you power. They were designed to make you think you had power. There was a struggle in the 60s and we lost. There was a time when black people said, well, we can't be human if we're not sitting next to somebody white, if we can't integrate with somebody white. And then somebody said, that's crazy. And so we said, well, why don't you just control where you live? And it was called the community control movement. And some of you know Ocean Hill, Brownsville, was when we tried to community control our public schools. And you know what happened? Every white union said, oh, they're kicking white people out, they're taking our jobs. This is America, this is where we were. Every struggle is a multi-level struggle. I'm not putting you down because somebody is missing next to you. I'm saluting you for coming because I know that at least 3 other meetings you probably felt you should have gone to, but you came to this one, because I know that's what I did. I had 2 other meetings and I made this one a priority. But what I am saying is we do have neighborhood block associations. Make them accountable to be the watchers over these real estate interests and what they are doing. Because just like you said, somebody banging against your wall while they are building a high-rise up. You know they're going to do damage. That's part of the design. That's intentional. That's community warfare. And the community boards were not designed to protect us. They were designed to make us think we have liberty, to make us think we have democracy. And you're winning. If they're threatening to arrest her, you're winning. Because now they've got to take the gloves off and fight for real and show who they are. And it's our job to come out and defend her. So I thank you for being here. I don't put you down because this place isn't built. I want you to understand something. People are scared. And they got a right to be scared. But we can't let her go down without having her back. And the person who's standing up who came here from community board lines, she knows she's wrong. She wouldn't tolerate this in her community, wherever she came from, whatever country she came from. She knows cats don't educate mice, they eat them. And we're here to fight back.
So that was actually just one thing I just wanted to say. You're spot on. You're 100% spot
But I
on.
need help. I can't fight cattle by myself.
Right. So I'm very familiar with that construction company, and I've worked with them, and they're interesting. That's all I have to say. But one thing that you have to understand, if there is work that is being performed next to your residence or your building whatsoever, there's supposed to be what's known as a seismic plan, all right, that is introduced or part of the package when construction is being done. All right? That seismic plan basically is to protect your home that the DOB is supposed to go through. And what happens if, based on the seismic plan and the load calculations, when it gets close to your home, the excavation is supposed to be done by hand 9 times out of 10. Do you think a developer who is pressed for time and his purchase order says, no, this has to be done by this date and whatnot, is going to turn around and perform all of that work next to your home by hand? Absolutely not. And this is one of the things that I have a problem with the DOB. They do not take a look at everything 100%. It gets to a point where they rubber stamp things because they are inundated. And if these text amendments pass through, it's going to be almost impossible for them to take place in order to review every single drawing, document, filing, and letter. It's going to be impossible.
He's right, because what happened was, we're not being charged because they did it incorrectly. Finding us,
we
have to tear up the block and
Okay.
it ourselves.
Oh, wait, we only have 5 more minutes left, so we need to get these 2 people to be able to...
Thank you, yes, everyone's good, but I really want to ask this question. Good night. I'm from a group of organization of constituents called Say No to Less. We have a website, saynotoless.org. Rod and I are neighbors. I'm one of the people, and one of my other neighbors are here, where across the street from us, they're going to build up 9 buildings in one, 7 shelters and 2 buildings they're calling a row of homes. Unfortunately, it's the New York State doing it. New York State is called Vital Brooklyn, but we call it non-vital Brooklyn. And when I look at the comparison on their website of ESD, Empire State Development, there's also development with Creedmoor. Creedmoor, they're building up over 58 acres. They're building up 2,600 units. But there's also going to be parking lot. 2,600 units over 58 acres. But across the street from us, they're building 1,100 units over 7 acres. There's a total disparity there. It's impact disparity. So how can we fight this project from going on because it's built by the state? How can we have effectively or be heard or delay this project or get someone to listen to us because there could be other things. We're in the highest in response time. In one of the emails that I sent, we have the lowest response time, or I said the largest response time in progress crimes going on. We were number 1. He came out. How can we fight this project against New York State?
This project started 10 years ago, and that was the point in which the community should have organized. It was organized under a Sunday woman, Diana Richardson, and she was the one who was pushing. She was having monthly meetings about this project, and she was assuring everybody that it was going to be this and that and that and this, and now she's gone, right? And the project has went forward. And this is the problem when we have these proposals, is they start out with an elected official making promises, and then the elected official leaves, and what we get is what the developer wanted from the beginning, which was just to create a bunch of housing. This is why it's important that we stop these projects before they even begin. Because once they start beginning, once they start the process, they're moving forward. They are moving forward. You can have your town hall meetings, you can have your protests, you can have your arrests, but we've seen them moving forward. So always the strategy is always to get it before it begins. And that's what the City of Yes is about. It's about stopping it before it passes legislation, before it becomes law. You have to stop it. And you have to do everything that you can to stop it. Professor, do you have something else you want to add to that?
Well, no, I agree 100%, and I've been on other forums with Alicia and given her the credit for doing what very few activists around, community activists around the city have done, which is stop it before it starts. You know, and it applies to zoning. When the city planning department comes in and says, oh, we want to do a plan with you and collaborate with you and all that. Alicia was one of the first, well, the first that I know of to say no right from the start. Stop it before it starts. And I could corroborate that because I saw it from the inside of government. This is how they manipulate communities. Oh, we want to work with you, we want to collaborate, we understand, and we sympathize, and all of that. But unless you put your foot down and take control of the process right from the beginning, our plan, we start the plan, we set out the government guidelines, and then if we need you, we'll call you. And I have to praise Alicia, as I've done many times, you know, for being proactive. Because that's the only way you can get ahead of it.
Yes.
Okay, we got one more, we got 5 more minutes, and then we are closing at 9. Oh, no more? Well, we'll let him speak anyway. It's not being recorded anymore.
Really quickly, my family owns a 2-story townhouse on Rogers Avenue.
Rogers, okay.
A few years ago, on the left of us, the house was torn down and they built an 8-story building. My house is semi-detached, and now my neighbor on the other side has sold her building. They've gutted it. They've just stopped. As I said to us, they're thinking about making it smaller, but now listening to you, I'm totally terrified that they're trying to figure out how to make it bigger.
A lot of development in our neighborhood has stopped because they're waiting for the city of yes. Because from that how many stories was it? The one next to you.
That they built? It's 8.
8. They can go 60% higher.
Yeah.
So you do the math. 60% higher. You do the math. How many more stories is that?
And my main concern is because now it's the attached.
Yes. That is a
sheer wall.
Yes.
So what I mean, I'm seeing your tear down, and I've seen them do that around the corner from me with an attached building where they tore it down.
That's right.
And then they built some. I mean, they're around the corner. There's a 20-story tower that I can see from my window.
Yes. Well, this is that zoning on steroids. That's what the city of yes is. You need to be talking to a structural engineer, just personally, because if they do start to do that, you're going to need somebody to come in and survey your entire house. It costs about $2 grand. You need to keep that on file. But it's worth it because it is your proof of what existed before they began development. And anything that then becomes harmful, any cracks that appear, any foundation issues, you then can sue them.
Well, a lot of people had to do, I mean, we were totally, you know, oh, you're just trying to be good neighbors, you're doing your stuff. They did underpinning and all this stuff to our, you know, and there were cracks and things, and so there's a brace on the corner of our building. There's all this stuff that's, you know, that was just before the pandemic, and we did get somebody that needed to review what they did.
But again, that pre and post is very important. So making sure that you get a structural engineer to come in and survey your property, you still should do it. Because if they stop, you still now have a point. Because if the city of yes comes through, they're not going to do the 8 stories, right?
12. Well, no.
Well,
8 stories.
So on one side, on your side, they might do 12.
Yeah, it's another 2-story building, which they said they were going to put another 2 or 3 stories.
No, they're doing the high.
So that, yeah, you know, I saw a flyer, which is you know, and I saw it, which is why I came tonight, because I have no clue about this.
Your zone is an R6, and so they plan on increasing by 60% R6 zoning. So that's why Flatbush is probably the most vulnerable communities, because we have these very small buildings, but we're in a zone that can go very high, and this one would even go higher. You need to be talking to your city council person, Rita Joseph.
My house is the